Welcome to the first episode of the jurytrial.com podcast brought to you by Trial Lawyers of Wisconsin. I'm Mike Karp.
And I'm Bob Welcenbach.
And today we're just going to kind of jump into a little bit of introduction of who we are, what this podcast is going to be about. We're still kind of working on our podcast setup, so this is a bit of a temporary setup, but just for some context, our firm, Bob and I, we have a firm together. We're out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's Trial Lawyers of Wisconsin, and we manage a small caseload. Almost all of our cases are either in litigation or scheduled for a jury trial. We handle catastrophic injury cases, medical malpractice, negligent security, wrongful death, cases that tend to end up in front of a jury. And Bob and I are partners. We run the firm together. Bob, why don't you just give a little bit of context of how we started the firm and sort of what we're going to be talking about on the podcast.
Yeah, so I've been a lawyer for over 25 years. I started out working with my dad and just kind of doing everything, and really discovered that I enjoyed doing jury trials. I met Michael about, 7-8 years ago when he moved in next door to me, and we both just really enjoyed doing personal injury cases, helping clients. And so we just started collaborating and eventually started trying cases together, and we're very successful. How we work together is very complementary, and based on that, we just decided we're going to join forces and try to really maximize the value for our clients.
On the podcast, sometimes we're going to have guests. We have a lot of good friends. We're lucky to know a lot of great trial lawyers around the country, some locally here in Wisconsin, others on the West Coast, Georgia, Florida. Just have different thinkers in, different approaches to trial. Something that we're just going to share is just, what we find useful, what we find interesting. We might be reading a trial guides book and just kind of comment on our thoughts about that. Maybe talk about, how we're approaching a certain case or our strategy for cases. Going to talk about focus groups, big data, presentation skills, PowerPoints, just get into all of it, the nuts and bolts, try to deep dive as much as we can. We did record a podcast already with Pat Kang with Ace Law Group out of Las Vegas. That'll be the second episode. That'll be released shortly. In that episode, we got into case framing, talked about his recent $15 million verdict for a slip and fall case at the Cosmo Casino and Hotel in Vegas, which was a banger. I really enjoyed the podcast with him.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so I guess the intent of the podcast is really just to kind of stream of consciousness, just share kind of day to day what's on our mind, what we're reading, what we're watching. We're both students of the game. We read trial guides, we watch CVN, we watch, spend a lot of times on the Netflix of trial, aka Trial Lawyers University on demand. And we just try to learn from lawyers that are getting phenomenal results, that have been doing it consistently over time, and keep an open mind on our approach. We're constantly talking with each other and reassessing how we do things, trying to fit it to the case that we're working on. What are you most excited to share or talk about?
I think one of the things that is unique about us is that we kind of go beyond the normal trial guides and in TLU, and we really get into psychology and neuroscience and how people behave and how they think. Yeah. And how they decide, because that's really the most important thing. Is you can watch TLU, you can read the trial guides, but ultimately it's about what motivates people to make a decision and to do the right thing, and that's really, I think, what we both ultimately at the end of the day are trying to get to, is how do we persuade people that what we're fighting for is right, because it is. We're here for the right reasons, and that's got to get communicated, and that's what I think the point of the podcast is how do we get to that?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about kind of the different phases of that. Obviously, case selection, how do you choose cases, what cases are winnable, losable, how do you know that? How do you know the case value? How do focus groups and big data interact? When should you do them? How do you use it? You get the data, then how do you meaningfully use the data? And these are just our thoughts. We don't know everything. We're constantly experimenting, tweaking, trying to learn from lawyers who have been doing this longer than we have. And on the podcast, basically, we're just going to kind of share with you just kind of our work in progress and how we're utilizing those techniques, those tools in our own practice. Like Bob said, we're very focused on how jurors decide. What is it that is persuasive? What evidence is persuasive? Going to get into the presentation of evidence, sponsorship theory, whether a certain piece of evidence is better off unaddressed, or you need to address it, and undermining, and just our thought process as to, based on what we're reading, what we're learning, our experience, how do we make those decisions? So probably, I'm most excited to pull up clips from some of our friends in the space, from phenomenal verdicts, and look at opening statement, look at a cross-examination. Certainly not from the point of view of, hey, we're going to tell you exactly what works or doesn't work, but just more so in appreciation of how different lawyers are handling cases, and just kind of learning from them and sharing that learning process with you.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's no right way or wrong way necessarily for you. I think you have to kind of look at this information and see what works for you, because you can only be yourself. You can't be someone else. And if you go into the courtroom and you're going to pretend like you're someone else, the jury's going to see through that. And so that's a lot of the discussions we have is this the right thing? Do you feel comfortable with it? Because at the end of the day, if you're not comfortable using these materials, techniques, it's going to come off weird in front of the jury. And ultimately, you have to be authentic. And that's what it comes down to. So it's a process of really learning all of this material and adapting it to yourself and really using it for your own personality. That's my view of how all of this trial stuff comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be talking about our trials and errors. A lot of this stuff I didn't always know about focus groups. I certainly always didn't know about big data. And we'll talk about our early experiences running focus groups, using big data, what's worked well, what we're still kind of undecided about or still learning. And I think that'll be a great discussion to have. We'll also, obviously, I'm hoping that there'll be good feedback on the podcast, and that there'll be a discussion of what we should talk about. We certainly aren't going to be coming out with a master plan or this is how things must be done. It's more so just going to be a conversation of, as we learn, as we implement, as we deploy things in our practice, just reporting to you and saying, hey, this is what's working, this is what we like, and this is what we're focused on.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to just talking to our friends and really taking a deep dive into their process, sharing their experiences, because at the end of the day, we're all part of this community. That's really, the purpose is really to make all of our practices better, and at the end of the day, have better justice and verdicts for our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many great podcasts already out there. There's podcasts that focus on jury selection, focus on case breakdowns, focus on opening statement or big data. We're not going to be focused on one particular thing, and I think all of those podcasts, we listen to them. You should listen to them. This is just going to be more so, our whatever's on our mind for that month, and we're hoping to bring you when we do have guests. It's not necessarily just going to be their background or their best, verdict or their recent verdict. We're going to try to dive deep with them and have them kind of open up their playbook and ask them, what are you learning? What are you focused on? And have a window into their thought process as well.
So one of the unique things about our firm and hopefully this podcast is that Michael and I have different levels of experience. I've been out about 25 years. How long have you been out, Michael?
I graduated 17, so
So
8 years.
we've have different experiences kind of practicing law with the changes in technology and through COVID and how the courts are situated now. And I think we offer a unique perspective, especially for up-and-coming lawyers, younger lawyers who really have a hard time getting in the courtroom, especially after COVID. All this remote Zoom court now makes it harder to have practical experience. And so we want to bring those experiences and what we've learned through that to younger lawyers so they can get that experience and start using those techniques in their trials.
Yeah, I think it'll be for anybody who either wants to do trials, is doing trials, or has been doing trials for a long time. There's going to be content here for everybody. I certainly started off with 0 trial experience not that long ago. So I can share kind of how I caught up to speed. Obviously, I had the benefit of working with Bob, who had a lot of experience, but through talking about all the tools and techniques that are out there, my hope is, at least from my perspective, is to share how you can, in today's age, you can catch up pretty quick. There's a lot of resources, hopefully like this podcast, that will help you avoid some of the mistakes that 10, 20 years ago everyone just had to make, and there was no way around it. So it's going to be for anybody who has an interest on trial. We're going to cover, like we talked about, kind of just everything. We'll have a different topic each month. So with that, I know that was a quick episode. We just wanted to give you a taste, a flavor of what jurytrial.com podcast is going to be. The next episode, or the first real episode, will be with Pat Kane. We'll talk about his $15 million verdict, more specifically kind of the case framing, his thought process going into the case and how it evolved over time. But thanks for tuning in. We look forward to doing this podcast.